waiting. And there we go. Okay. So that war is the Crimean War. All right. Now the Crimea is it's kind of a peninsula that sticks out of the currently, and for a while at least, the country of Ukraine into the Black Sea. All right. But it's Russia always wants the Ukraine. I mean, they always want the Crimea to this day. Okay. Russia is still having a low intensity war with Ukraine to try and get more and more of Crimea. All right. So we're going to get this Crimean War. All right. And on one side is Russia. Okay. Now there is an interesting side note but you won't have to know it for a test or anything. The Holy Land, and some of you may have made pilgrimages there, but it's still a thing for Christians to do. The Holy Land is in the control of the Ottoman Empire, right? It's in the Middle East. And the Ottoman Empire, though, allows Christians from the West to come and visit the Holy Land on pilgrimages because it's profitable. They make money from the tourism, and it is politically the more powerful nations really want it. And so nations take turns being the official protectors of pilgrims going to the Holy Land. And that's also lucrative, right? And essentially Russia said that it should be their turn. And they took over from France and claimed that they were the protectors of Christians in the Ottoman Empire, which was not okay with France and Britain. That's not nearly as big a deal as the fact that when the Ottoman Empire begins to shrink, Russia invades, and we've talked about these places before, and once again, the Russian troops go into Wallachia and Moldavia. All right, they take territory around the Black Sea, and that is unpopular. All right, and so we're going to get the Crimean War. That's Poger's symbol for war. All right, and we're going to have Russia on one side. All right, and on the other side, the Ottoman Empire, Britain, France, and Piedmont, Sardinia. Okay, so take a look. On one side, we have Eastern Orthodox but Christian Russia versus the Muslim Ottoman Empire, Protestant Britain, Catholic France, and Catholic Piedmont, Sardinia. So what definitely is absolutely not a reason for wars by the middle of the 19th century? Drew Larson.
Religion.
Religion. Good. Okay, yeah. All right, so religion doesn't matter. This is big power politics. And really, these other nations, they're nervous about Russia. And so they just want to knock Russia down a peg. Okay, remember how nations were nervous about France? Well, temporarily, Russia is going to be the new France. The other nations are concerned about its overwhelming might. So we get this alliance of all of these nations against Russia. All right, and here we have the Crimean War. I'm going to get my little pointer guy. All right, so here's the Crimean Peninsula. Okay, so here's the Crimea, and right down the center runs the main river, which is the Crimea River. Okay, so essentially, not a lot of note happens. There are a few inconsequential battles. All right, the most famous is the Battle of Balaclava, and there's two new types of clothing that we get. The full face mask that you wear when you're snowboarding or skiing, that's usually called a balaclava. All right, and that's what the Western forces first saw them wearing. It was so cold. And then what do we call here? This would be a good point. What do we call a sweater a buttoning sweater that you wear over other clothes? Emily Delano.
A cardigan?
It's a cardigan. That's right. And those became the fashion in the cold, cold weather of the Crimean War because Lord Cardigan of the British Army wore a sweater like that. So it came to be called a cardigan. So we get the balaclava and the cardigan, right? And then we get this famous charge of the Light Brigade, which is militarily unsuccessful, but it's very romantic because the 600 British cavalrymen rode directly into Russian artillery fire. Not a good idea, but very brave. And then the National Poet Laureate of Britain, Alfred Lord Tennyson, which she didn't put his, oh yeah, there it is. He writes Charge of the Light Brigade, which becomes a very famous poem, right? But we're not going to get any major military innovations or changes, with a couple of exceptions. First of all, by far the most deaths in the war are not caused by combat. They're caused by disease and mismanagement. Okay, all the armies, but particularly the Russians, they have troops dying of dysentery and all sorts of diseases in huge numbers, and they really don't have any kind of medical facilities. And so we're going to get, starting with Britain, we're going to see a need to have better medical facilities in the field with our armies. And we're going to get nurses now. And Florence Nightingale is the most famous of these nurses. And she was from a sort of a upper bourgeoisie family. And she announced that she was going to be a nurse. And this will be surprising, I guess. But before this time, before Florence Nightingale, nursing was considered like that much above prostitute. Okay, it was not considered an honorable profession. And Florence Nightingale's family was very scandalized when she said she was going to be a nurse. But she became famous for her compassion and her hard work, and really brought nursing, started it on the path to where it is today, of being a very respected profession. Okay. So the war ends. The main outcome is that Russia loses badly. Right? And so essentially France and Britain get to dictate terms to the Russians and somewhat the Ottomans for how things are going to be. All right. So no Russian or Ottoman navies can be on the Black Sea. Right. And because it's in their interest, all the five great powers agree that they're not going to put extra pressure on the Ottoman Empire, because the Ottoman Empire is declining. And every time the Ottoman Empire shrinks, and we talked about this a little bit, new areas and new lands become free of Ottoman control. And that always threatens to start a war between European powers, usually Russia and Austria, for who's going to get it. Okay, and oftentimes it's a three-way conflict. Russia wants to control it, Austria wants to control it, or the people who live there want to run themselves. Okay, so that's going to happen again and again and again until it leads to 3 wars, the last of which is World War I. Okay, so who benefits? Okay, well, the British and the French benefit. Piedmont, Sardinia, they benefit. Why is little Piedmont in this war? You read about it. Why is Piedmont, Sardinia fighting on the side of the French and British? Ella. Let me go over to the chat. No? Are you trying your mic, Ella? Okay, yes. Good, Ella. All right. Yeah, they want to gain favor with these powerful nations because they know they're gonna have to go up against Austria to unify Italy. Right? Who loses big? Okay, and that's Russia. All right. Russia handles this very badly, and for the first time now, people aren't as afraid of the Russian bear as they used to be. Okay, so it's a big loss in prestige for Russia. It's a small W for France and Britain. It's a big political win for Camillo di Cavour in Piedmont. Okay, and it buys the Ottomans some more time. But the main effect for our purposes is, after 1815, war they thought would always lead to revolution. Well, now we've had a war and it didn't lead to any revolutions. So now the European powers are going to be more willing to resort to warfare to get what they want. And that's why in the reading you saw Italy and Germany are unified by war. Okay, because they now believe they can fight wars with each other once again without losing control of everything. So essentially the concert of Europe ends with the Crimean War. But we're still not going to get a generalized war for another 50 years. Okay. Well, we will now unify two nations that we've been talking about for a long time. All right. Let's start with Italy. All right. And we have a colorful cast of personalities, right? We have Camillo di Cavour, Giuseppe Garibaldi, Giuseppe Mazzini, and Victor Emmanuel II, right? Now, you read a lot about Cavour, okay? That's what he looks like. Wealthy businessman. It doesn't say in the reading, but he made his money in the sugar industry, right? Made a fortune in sugar. And, you know, we all like sugar. So he was an industrialist from the Piedmont. Garibaldi and Mazzini, we saw back in the revolutions of 1848. What place did they take over and try to make it a republic in 1848? Let me go back to the handsy part. What place did Mazzini and Garibaldi take over and they declared it a republic for the first time in thousands of years? Bryson?
Greece?
No, they didn't take over Greece. Finch?
Sicily?
No, not Sicily. Hamas.
The Papal States?
Yeah, what's the biggest, most famous of the Papal States?
Rome?
Rome. All right. Yeah, they take over Rome. Okay. And who invades to kick them out and rescue the Pope? Who gallops to the Pope's rescue, Kylie?
The French.
Led by? All right, I'm going to give Kylie a point for the French. What French leader did this because he's a tyrant and thought it would be popular? Rachel.
Napoleon III.
Yes. Nap 3. Good job. Okay. And King Victor Emmanuel II becomes king of Piedmont. Remember, his father, Victor Emmanuel I, tried to go directly to war with Austria and how'd that work out? Badly, right? So badly that Victor Emmanuel had to step down, and his son, Victor Emmanuel II, becomes king of Piedmont, Sardinia. All right. So we have Garibaldi and Mazzini, who we saw in 1848. Mazzini, he's the leader of a thing called Young Italy, and he's a romantic nationalist. He's a poet. He inspires the young people, okay, to have a unified Italy. Garibaldi, and notice the shirt, right? He's the fighter. He's the swashbuckler. He leads a fascinating life. After he gets kicked out of the Papal States, he goes to South America to help indigenous peoples fight for freedom from the nation states that had become independent from Spain. He takes a common law wife and fights in the jungles of South America. And then Cavour, politician, businessman, responsible upper bourgeoisie. Technically, he's of the nobility, but very much a middle class, upper middle class type of figure. And then saying, I don't like this at all, is Pope Pius IX. All right. The Catholic Church is going to fight Italian unification tooth and nail, because if Italy gets unified, then they're stuck in the middle of a unified country and it ends their independence. So the Catholic Church will continue to oppose Italy becoming a country until they have no choice by 1870. And so Poger here, she says that Piedmont, Sardinia is the magnet. Okay. What does Cavour do to make Piedmont a magnet, to make it a place that other Italian states be like, oh, I'd join with them. I'd play on their team. Sadie?
He increased like trade and had a bunch of economic reforms, kind of.
Yeah, he made the Piedmont. Good job, Sadie. He made the Piedmont the richest, most advanced province in Italy. Okay, a magnet. I said in the test an economic beacon, I think. or maybe I just said that in my notes. Yeah, he basically says, this is a place you want to join with. We got it together. We got a liberal constitution. We got an advanced economy. You want to be part of this. Okay, so he tries to make it a magnet, but only for northern Italy. He really believes, okay, that the southern states, say south of Rome, are just too different, too rural, too, he would say, backwards, right? Too undeveloped to really fit with northern Italy, the part that he controls and the part that Austria controls and the part that France controls. Okay, he wants to unify all of this. But events are going to speed up. Right? And so then she goes over a review of insurrectionists, the Carbonari, not to be confused with the Carabinieri, which are the Italian National Police. But these are Italian nationalists who were followers of Mazzini, in that first stage of nationalist revolution, when the concert of Europe was still happening and nationalist movements would be crushed, right? And so then here is Victor Emmanuel II riding into battle against the Russians, right? And so the steps to Italian unification, we're going to see both in Cavour and Bismarck, guys who, and we don't see this in politicians as much anymore, they really do their homework. And they plan things out, okay? They have a plan going forward. And now that Cavour believes he has generalized support and has elevated Piedmont status, he needs specific support, and he needs Napoleon III's support against who? Whom does he have to go to war with to expand Italy? Let's see, and I will go with... ooh, look at all these hands. Let me go with Mitchell.
Prussia, right?
Not Prussia. Katerina.
I'm sorry, Austria.
Oh, all right. All right.
I had a brain fart. Sorry.
That's okay. Yes. He's going to have to go to war with Austria, and he wants to do better than his father, so he wants France on his side. So Cavour and Napoleon meet at Plombières, and there's two meetings we'll talk about today, one at Plombières and one at Ems. And in this meeting, they're essentially looking for a reason to go to war. And technically, Austria has been violating some trade treaties and things like that. But Napoleon III, always the political creature, says, I can't really take France to war over a trade dispute, right? I mean, that might have worked for Phantom Menace and the prequels, but really, who goes to war over a trade dispute? Anyway, and so finally they come up with a plan that will work. And they're able to get the Duke of Parma, right, who's a harsh pro-Austrian noble. They know if they start Italian nationalist protests in the street in Parma, that the Duke will overreact and will get bloodshed and will get martyrs for the cause. And then all of the Italians will want to rise up against the evil, bloodthirsty Austrians and kick them out. And so they send agents in to start nationalist revolts in Parma, and the Duke of Parma does what he can be counted on to do, and he overreacts. And then we get, this public relations coup for Cavour and Napoleon III. The Austrians are killing Italians, and we have to do something about it. And so they get their pretext for war, and they go to war. And we get the Austro-Sardinian War. Now, the key to this, both Cavour and Bismarck do this, they're able to trick Austria into declaring war first, all right? And so essentially, Austria invades, to support their rulers, and then the French and the Italians can sit back and say, whoa, Austria is now, being aggressive. All we're going to do is try to defend our people. So they don't look like the bad guys because they don't start it, okay? So then we get the Austro-Sardinian War, and it's a lot bloodier, as you know from the reading, than Napoleon III had wanted. And so Napoleon III quits, and without the French, the Piedmontese can't pursue the war against Austria themselves. So then we get this separate piece where the Austrians get to keep Venetia, Lombardy's added to Piedmont, but Cavour is disgusted, and he quits the government. But meanwhile, right, events continue outside of him, right? we get Garibaldi and his red shirts, okay? They land, first they conquer Sicily, and then they start working their way up the boot here, and they're gaining territories, mostly from Bourbons, but other old-time nobles and princes. And Garibaldi and his red shirts, like 1,000 guys, are conquering all these little kingdoms and fiefdoms down here, all right? Meanwhile, these other states that have been watching the war, they just voluntarily say, we're going to join with Piedmont, all right? And so as you read, Cavour has to come in. He comes back to the government to accept all these new territories. So we have the other northern Italian states explicitly joining with Piedmont because they're impressed, right? Venetia is still controlled by the Austrians, right? But Garibaldi and his red shirts are marching up towards Rome, right? And they're threatening Rome. What happened the last time Garibaldi threatened Rome? I got everything. Bryson.
He got attacked, I guess you can say.
By who?
France.
France. The last time the Pope was threatened, Napoleon III, who, remember, he's essentially a tyrant. He needs to do what's popular, and he doesn't have all the battlefield dubs that his uncle did. So he needs to do popular things, and saving the Pope is popular in Catholic France. And so Cavour, who's now back in the government, is very scared that if Garibaldi takes over Rome, France will invade its ally Italy, and the whole thing will be wrecked. So a series of things happens that you read about, but essentially Victor Emmanuel II actually travels from Piedmont to meet with Garibaldi outside of Rome, okay? And there's a Piedmontese army facing Garibaldi's red shirts. And so we have two Italian armies facing each other. They don't want to fight. They're on the same side. And so they have a national plebiscite, right? A vote. And all the men of Italy vote to form this new united country of Italy in 1861. It just doesn't include Venetia, where Venice is, or the Papal States. But still, most of Italy becomes Italy in 1861. The other two territories will be added by a result of the next guy, right? Bismarck's going to start the war with Austria, which we'll get to in a second. And Austria will lose so badly that Italy will be able to take Venetia. And then Bismarck is going to ruin France in a war. And they go ahead and absorb all the Papal States except for the Vatican itself, because they know France can't do anything about it. All right. So the last two chunks are delivered to Italy courtesy of Bismarck and the Prussian army. And here we have, here's Garibaldi helping Victor Emmanuel put the boot on, and he's going to become the first king of unified Italy. And they get the flag. Mm-hmm. Now, many similarities and key differences in German unification. Remember, we've had all of these attempts to unify Germany. We had the Zollverein, which was a trade union. It was a German trade union. Primarily, they're trying to compete with who? Who's really the industrial leader of the world in 1834? Who are they trying to compete with when they formed the Zollverein? Caitlin Rodriguez.
Is it Great Britain?
Why, it is. Thanks for asking. Yeah, it's Great Britain. Okay. And so they formed this trade union. Okay. We also then, after the revolutions of 1848, we have a reconfirming of the German Confederation. Remember, Frederick Wilhelm turns down the crown from the Frankfurt Parliament, all that stuff. And so we left things hanging in the end of chapter 22 with two powerful German states, Austria and Prussia. And this black line, right, this is the German Confederation. So the German part of Austria, Prussia, and all these other German states. And then the big struggle is who's going to be the leader of the Germans. And for a while, it looks like it's going to be the Austrians. Then the Austrians start, suffering key defeats. All right. And they don't participate in the Crimean War. So the key players, Kaiser Wilhelm I, okay? He becomes king, okay? When Frederick William, as you probably know, Frederick William IV is declared insane, right? And he becomes Kaiser or king. And he wants to add, basically, his initial goal isn't to create Germany, but he wants to expand Prussia's army again and unify and strengthen Prussia and add some territories to Prussia. But, and for some reason, she puts in the chief of the German general staff, Helmut von Moltke. He'll be important. We'll talk about him more when we get closer to World War I. Right? But the main dog in this, and he gets 3 pictures, is Otto von Bismarck. All right, here is a young statesman, an older general, and the Iron Chancellor. Right, and Wilhelm I. Remember the Landtag, which is the Prussian Parliament. They turned down Wilhelm's request, right, to essentially raise taxes to grow the military. And but this isn't Britain, okay? The king decides, okay, well, the parliament said I can't, but I'm going to do it anyway. And he hires Bismarck, right, who had been a diplomat and very successful, kind of like Cavour, in that once he enters politics, he goes to the top really quick. And he makes Bismarck his chief minister, and essentially it's Bismarck's job to do everything Wilhelm I wants, whether the parliament wants it or not. And so as soon as he takes power, he goes to the parliament, the Prussian parliament in Berlin, and he says, I'm going to do what I want. Try and stop me, right? He says, the great ideas, the great things of this age will not be decided by debates and voting and constitutions. It'll be decided by blood and iron. And so I'm going to increase our iron because we're going to draw a lot of blood expanding Prussia. All right, and then there's some good quotes about it, and they are still true. All right. Do you really want to know how sausage is made? No, you don't. No. Same thing about government and legislature. You don't want to know. Okay. It will reduce your confidence. All right. This is a good one. Never believe anything until it's been officially denied. I like that one. All right. And then here it is. The great questions of the day will not be settled by speeches and majority decisions. That was the mistake of 1848, but by blood and iron. Action. Okay. He's an action guy. And then, like Cavour, he has very limited goals. He has a precise plan for achieving them. And then once he's achieved them, he's like, I don't know what to do next. Okay. He creates the German Reich or the German Empire. All right. This is a good one. He sees what's coming with World War I, and he wants to avoid it. But essentially, the generation that has taken a beating is always followed by a generation that deals one. And this is really true between Germany and France, right? France will whoop Germany. Germany, a generation later, will come back and whoop France. Back and forth, back and forth, all right? And then he's also right about this. Some damn foolish thing in the Balkans will start the next war. He sees how, as the Ottoman Empire is shrinking and these territories are coming free, that it causes instability. All right. So here's the German Confederation. And then he has this cool 3-step plan. All right. The first part is basically the King of Denmark gives him a gift. When the King of Denmark, and this map is impossible to read, but these 2 northern territories, now remember, Denmark is connected to Europe, even though we consider part of Scandinavia, it's connected to Germany. And Schleswig and Holstein are these 2 territories that are mixed Danish and German. And when the King of Denmark annexes the territory, Bismarck realizes he's going to be able to get a coalition of Germans to fight against Denmark to free the German people that are being held by the Danes. All right. And he immediately adds Austria to this. And so Austria and Prussia essentially, and imagine Austria and Prussia versus Denmark. That's not going to last long, right? And so they quickly defeat Denmark, and Denmark gives up any claim over Schleswig and Holstein, all right? And then what he does is he has the Austrians, their military occupies Holstein, and the Prussian military occupies Schleswig. And if you look here, this is all Prussian territory to the south and the Prussian army to the north. This Austrian army is completely surrounded by Prussians. And Bismarck gives the Prussian army orders to be as rude and provoking and nasty as possible to the Austrians, because he wants to provoke them into doing what? Declaring war. And like the Italians did, he's able to provoke the Austrians into declaring war on Prussia. So again, he doesn't look like the bad guy. And so then we get the 7 weeks war. What does it tell you about a war if it only lasts 7 weeks? That means one side is much more powerful than the other. I'm sure that's what Bryson was going to say. All right. You have the Prussian army, which is traveling on trains, and they have the first commonly issued breech loading rifles, right? You put the bullet in at the back, which is much more convenient and faster. The Austrians still have muzzle loaders. And the Prussian army well, it's not super bloody because it's so decisive. And so Austria loses quickly. And then they sue for peace. And this is exactly part of Bismarck's plan, right? All they really have to do, well, they have to pay an indemnity because technically they started the war. But they have to get out of German affairs. That's all he really wants to achieve. He doesn't want to destroy Austria. He doesn't want to depose the Habsburgs. He just wants them to stay out of what he's trying to do. Okay. And also remember from the reading, before he went to war with Austria, he went to all the other powers of Europe and said, hey, there might be some trouble between us and the Habsburgs. You're going to stay out of it, right? It's like a German thing. And he got everyone to stay out of it. Okay. He did his prep work. All right. And so he was able to use war because he was able to contain it, something which is very difficult to do. All right. And so then he makes the North German Confederation, and there's no question now that Prussia is the dominant German state. All right. And they signed the peace treaty in Prague because that's convenient because it's between Austria and Germany. But those southern German states, right? What's a key difference between the Prussians and, say, the Bavarians? I'll go with Bryson.
Religion.
Yeah, what religion are the southern Germans, Bryson?
Catholics.
Yeah. All right, so we got the Catholic South, the Prussian Lutheran Protestant North, and also the southern states, they're much more liberal, all right? They're less autocratic. So they see themselves as German, but they're not in a hurry to be dominated by cold, officious, ruthlessly efficient Prussia. And so what does Bismarck need? He needs Thanos. He needs an outside threat to cause all the German states to pull together. And who's that outside threat? It's France. All right? And again, he sees his moment and he capitalizes on it. So again, how many times has this happened in the 19th century? We get another revolt in Spain, and they want to stay a monarchy, but they depose their king. And one of the key candidates to become the next monarch is Leopold von Hohenz, who is part of the Hohenzollerns. And he's the Kaiser's Catholic cousin. Now, he couldn't be considered for king of Spain if he wasn't Catholic, but he's a Central German Hohenzollern, but he is part of the Prussian ruling family, all right? And people don't want this. Remember the War of Spanish Succession, where they wanted, they really didn't want Louis XIV's nephew to become king of Spain? Same thing. They don't want Wilhelm I's cousin to become king of Spain, all right? And France protests, and then in the interest of peace, Prince Leopold says, okay, I won't take it. Don't consider me for the leadership, all right? And then going a step too far, Napoleon III overreaches quite a bit in the second half of his reign. He sends an ambassador to the Kaiser at Ems, which is where the Kaiser is vacationing. And essentially, she says he asked the Kaiser to apologize, but in your reading and the way I've been told, essentially, they try to extract a promise from Kaiser Wilhelm that he will never support one of his relatives taking a throne in Spain. And the Kaiser simply says, no, I'm not going to do that. And the meeting's over. All right. Well, and this is where Bismarck is very much a modern politician, right? He makes fake news. He doctors the telegram, the dispatches that are sent from Ems back to Berlin, and he makes it look like the emperor, the Wilhelm II, had been very rude to the French ambassador, and had insulted Napoleon III and his mama and the French people and all of that. And the French are very insecure, okay? And they underestimate Prussia's power. And so now France demands war with Prussia. Bismarck has tricked now France into declaring war against him. And this is going to be another really quick war, all right? And we'll get here, the Franco-Prussian War, all right? 1870 to 71. And it's really over within 1870. And keep this in mind when we get to World War I and World War II, right? We have German forces streaming across the border at Alsace and Lorraine. And they move so fast that they're able to surround Napoleon III and his forces at this place here called Sedan, all right? And so the bulk of the French army is cut off at Sedan, right here on the Belgian border. And then another German force heads to Paris, okay? And so remember, Bismarck's able to get all the German states to unify under Prussia's leadership, because the Germans are still pissed about the 30 Years' War, all right? Even though it was 200 years before, they still hate the French for that. And so a unified German force, not with Austria, quickly defeats the French army. They put Paris under siege, and we'll talk more about this later when we get back to socialism and Marxism. Once again, the people of Paris, just like we saw in 1789, 91, 93, 1820, 1848, they rise up and they declare Paris a republic and a commune. And the communists, especially Marx himself, are looking at what's happening in Paris to see, can a communist state exist? And it's going to be crushed, but it holds out longer than Napoleon III did. And we get, for now at least, the end of the Franco-Prussian War, right? And we see propaganda that's going to be repeated a lot in World War I of the German soldier abusing French womanhood, all right? And another one here, we have the French soldier, right, dressed as the crusader, the defender of Christianity, and we have the German as the barbarian, right, the guys who fought against the Roman Empire. All right, so we have the barbarian from the east crushing poor little France. And this is great. Napoleon's force gets beaten so badly at Sedan that he spends the afternoon riding into cannon fire trying to get killed. Napoleon III does. And he fails even at that. He doesn't get killed. Most of his advisors get killed, but he doesn't. And so he's captured. And so here's Bismarck sitting with him, you know, saying, well, kind of sucks for you, but at least you're not dead. And so there's Napoleon III, who is captured, and they hold him, and they're able once again to demand reparations from France, because technically France started the war. It's all working out very well. And we're going to get two treaties, the Treaty of Frankfurt and the Treaty of Paris, right? And so the Second French Empire collapses, and we're going to get the Third French Republic, really, which will then become an empire, but in a different way, when you'll see when you start reading about imperialism. France is in no position to defend the papacy, so now that last chunk of Italy is united, right? The papal states, everything except the Vatican. Russia thinks nobody's looking, and they occupy the Black Sea. And that's, again, it's exactly what Putin's doing today. He knows we're not looking, we're not paying attention, and he's solidifying his control of the Crimea. All right. So France paid a huge indemnity. That's what you pay when you break something or when something's your fault. And France will be occupied by German troops until that indemnity is paid back. All right. And then those two territories, and they are beautiful territories, which you saw on the map before, Alsace and Lorraine. Every time there's a war, between Germany and France, the winner gets Alsace and Lorraine. Okay, so Germany took them from France. After World War I, France is going to take them from Germany. Then Hitler's going to take them back from France. Okay, these people get whiplash trying to figure out what country they're in. Okay, but it's a really nice area. That's why both sides want it. Okay. And then here's Wilhelm I being crowned Emperor of Germany, not in Berlin, not in Frankfurt, okay, but in the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. Why do you suppose he has himself declared the Emperor of Germany in Louis XIV's palace? Okay, I got Bryson, Kylie. Anybody else want to jump in? All right, I got a coin flip between these two. Don't have a coin, so Kylie, Bryson will get the next one. Why do you suppose that he has himself crowned Emperor of Germany in a French palace? Kylie.
Oh, sorry. Because it makes him seem stronger so nobody messes with him.
Yeah, it's a little more pointed than that, though. What were you going to say, Bryson?
It's kind of like how can I say it? Like a symbol of power. It's like saying "ha."
Saying "ha" to who?
The French.
Yeah, they're sticking it to the French. They're rubbing the French's nose in it. Okay. Oftentimes in football, right? Not often, but it's considered really bad form after you beat a team in their stadium to stomp all over their logo, right? You guys are too young to remember when LT got really upset about that when the evil Patriots did it. But essentially, like if you beat a team and then you hold a celebration on top of their logo at midfield, that's bad form. That's what this is. He has himself crowned King of Germany in the French palace. All right. And it is ultimate payback for the 30 Years' War and all those years of French meddling with a disunited Germany. And the French are going to never forget or forgive this. Okay. And then this is a neat couple of things. We get the Junkers, right? The Prussian nobles, they're swearing their allegiance to the Kaiser. So he's definitely the king of a conservative Germany, all right? And we get the German imperial flag, all right? And then, and one cool thing that I'll end with, now instead of the Landstag, we have the Reichstag, and this will be the name of the German parliament from now on. And essentially what Bismarck does is he goes back to the parliament and he says, I told you I was going to do this. I told you it was going to be blood and iron, and I've been amazingly successful. Now you have a chance to get on the winning team, and you can retroactively approve everything I did that led to the creation of the German Empire. And they do. So they retroactively approve everything he did on his own, so that they can also get on board with this tremendous success. All right. So like how Napoleon did, where he would have a vote and he would say, do you approve of the things I did? That's what Bismarck does. And so it legitimizes the Kaiser's rule and Bismarck's administration. All right. So now we have a united Germany and a united Italy, and it will not, well, it's going to permanently upset the balance of power. Okay, Germany is so powerful, so fast that the rest of Europe's going to be reacting to it. All right, and then Bismarck's one failure, the Kulturkampf, he tries to reduce the power of the Catholic Church in southern Germany. Remember, because they're Lutherans, and it fails. That's his only real failure, and we'll talk more about that when we get into later German politics later. Okay. And